The COVID playbook, how this war is about to change the way we work forever. The Iran war and COVID parallel, AI acceleration in the time of war. I want to start today with a question, and I want you to sit and think about it for a moment. In February 2020, if I had told you that within 6 weeks, every office in the world would be empty, that Zoom would end up being your go-to tool for communications, that remote work would stop being a perk and would become the baseline expectation for work for an entire generation of professionals, would you have believed me? Of course not, because it sounded crazy until it wasn't. Now, I want you to hold on to that thought for a minute, because what we're living through right now is going to be setting us up for the next version of that moment. If it doesn't happen straight away, there is a possibility that it will become a norm because the wheels have already been set in motion and the changes will come. Why? Because it's just good business, plain and simple. And if you think back to the companies you worked for before, you'll start connecting the dots. You've seen this play out before. Today's session is going to open your eyes to what is really happening behind closed doors. But I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'll also show you how to navigate the chaos and come out the other side stronger. Welcome back to Future Ready with Bryce Barrows. I'm Bryce Barrows, your Future Readiness Architect. This is episode 5, and I want to tell you something up front. This might be the most important episode that I've recorded to date. So why is this the most important episode to date, you may ask? Because today I'm going to connect two things that most people are treating as two separate stories. One is the war in Iran, and the other is your career. In this episode, I'm going to show you with real data and a very recent warning from one of the most unlikely sources on the planet that what is happening in the Persian Gulf right now is about to change the way we work permanently. And that too at a speed that most professionals are completely unprepared for. Part 1, what is actually happening? Let me give you the ground reality quickly so that it's easy for you to start connecting the dots. On Feb 28, 2026, the US and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran. It was titled Operation Epic Fury. The Supreme Leader Khamenei was killed, and so were multiple Iranian military and political figures. Iran responded immediately with ballistic missiles and drone attacks across the region, hitting US bases in the Gulf, targeting Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. By March 4th, Iran declared the Strait of Hormuz closed. For those who aren't familiar, the Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide stretch of water through which roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass every single day. That's approximately 20% of the world's entire oil supply. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE all export through it. China gets about a third of the crude imports through it. Europe relies on it for LNG from Qatar. When Iran shut it down using drone strikes and threat against merchant shipping, the International Energy Agency called it the greatest global energy security challenge in history. Brent crude surged past $100 a barrel from around $65 before the conflict. Over 150 cargo ships just sat anchored outside the strait, unable to move. The IEA released a record 400 million barrels of strategic reserves, which barely moved prices. As of this recording, the US and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. Talks are currently being held in Islamabad, Pakistan, as this recording is taking place, and the world is holding its collective breath and waiting to see the outcome. Whatever the outcome, an economic shockwave has already started, and I'm about to show you how it's going to affect your career and the consequences that will follow. Part 2. The COVID moment nobody is naming. Okay, this is where I want to spend some time because this is the angle that I haven't heard many people talk about. And it's the one that matters most to you as a professional. Let's go back to COVID for a moment. Before March 2020, the idea of remote work was treated as a nice to have. Companies had been debating it for years. The technology existed, Zoom existed, Microsoft Teams existed, Google Hangouts existed. Apart from that, cloud collaboration tools like Dropbox, Drive, and OneDrive, they all existed and we were using it as well. But the corporate world had decided mainly out of habit that work happened in offices. And then COVID hit. And within weeks, every single one of those conversations stopped. The debate was over. The technology got deployed overnight. Entire industries rewired how they operated, not because they had a strategy, but because they had no choice. And the changes that happened in those 6 weeks took things that might have taken a decade to adopt. All of this was compressed into a matter of days. Zoom's daily meeting participants went from 10 million customers in December 2019 to 300 million by April 2020. That's not adoption. That's a category-defining shift in how human beings work. Now, I want you to think about it. What permanently changed? Remote and hybrid work is now the baseline expectations for knowledge workers globally. Digital collaboration tools are standard infrastructure. The gig economy came up and exploded. Geographic barriers to hiring collapsed. A software engineer in Nairobi, Kenya, now competes for the same remote role as someone who is sitting in London. People are refusing to return to office setups, and some are still working from home for several days a week. There was no total reversal after COVID. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. We are in a similar setup for a similar kind of moment, but this time, the forcing function is not a virus. It's an energy shock, a margin crisis, and a war that has every CFO on the planet accelerating decisions they'd been deferring for 2 years. And I'm not the only one saying it. Just a couple of weeks back, on March 26, 2026, Vladimir Putin addressed a summit of Russian industrialists and explicitly warned that the Iran war's economic consequences could be as serious as those of the COVID pandemic. Putin said the effects on international logistics, supply chains, and manufacturing were already comparable in scale. Now, I'm not in the habit of quoting Putin as a career coach, but when geopolitical rivals are using the same frame to describe what's happening, that frame is worth paying attention to. The COVID parallel is not a rhetoric, it's a structural observation. And here's the structural observation. COVID forced an overnight shift in where we work. This conflict is forcing an overnight shift in who or what does the work. Unfortunately, the technology to make that shift is not in development. It already exists. It's already deployed in early form at many companies across every industry. The deployment may be small, but it has started and it will accelerate because of what is happening at this moment in time. All that is needed was an economic crisis to give the C-suite the cover and the urgency to move from pilot programs to company-wide mandates. The war just gave them that excuse. Part 3. How corporate leadership actually thinks in a crisis. When you look at the macro-level corporate environment, a war of this scale doesn't slow down AI dominance over human jobs. It acts as a brutal high-speed catalyst. I want to take you into a major meeting room where such decisions are made for just 1 minute. Because I've been in these meetings, I've been in these rooms, and I know how this conversation goes. When an external shock hits, like COVID, a financial crisis, a war, or an energy spike, the C-suite does not panic. They get very methodical and very, very fast. And they have a standard playbook. Most of you have seen it play out before. And when I start mentioning it, it will ring a bell. The first thing that they do is they start freezing all external spending. No new vendors, no new project, no discretionary budget, travel bans, recruitment freezes. You get the picture. You have encountered this, haven't you? When companies feel that things are not good, their first instinct is to curb expenses. Second thing, they start reviewing the highest controllable cost. Can you guess what that is? In most organizations, that is its people. Payroll, benefits, and overheads. These are all tied to headcount. The third thing, and this is the one that most employees miss. So what C-suite does is that they look at what technology they already have access to. They will look at the technology that could reduce the cost and they start to implement it. They're not looking at new technology. They're looking at the tools that they already have in the building. All those tools that are already licensed, already partially deployed, and then they ask that question: how much can we squeeze it and how fast can we start deploying? You see, COVID accelerated remote work, not because companies had a vision. It's because they had Zoom licenses that they hadn't fully deployed. In addition, they needed people to keep working. The crisis removed the friction. The technology was already there. So now all that they had to do was just go ahead and implement it at a scale. So now with the war and rising prices, ask yourself, what tool is at hand? The same dynamic is playing out right now, but right now it's not Zoom, it's AI. Most large organizations already have Microsoft Copilot. They already have AI tools embedded in their HR systems, their CRM, and their analytics platforms. They've been running pilots. They've been testing use cases. They have internal reports sitting on someone's desk saying, this could replace 30% of these roles. Those reports have been sitting there because there wasn't enough pressure to act on them. Now there is. The conversation has shifted from should we accelerate AI adoption to how fast can we deploy what we already have. Even if the war doesn't continue, if the ceasefire agreement and peace talks goes ahead in Islamabad with very good outcomes, management has already been stretched so hard that they are definitely thinking along those lines. Even worse, if there is peace in the Middle East, the question on their mind will always be this: what if this happened again? You see, that is the shift. And I want to be clear, it's not happening in 2 years. Management is thinking about it right now. Part 4, what changes permanently and what doesn't? COVID showed us something important. When a crisis forces a new way of working, some of those changes stick, while some don't. Remote work stuck. Full return to office mandate that companies tried. Some people returned and some quit. The changes that stick are the ones where the new way is genuinely more efficient and the organization has built new infrastructure around it. The changes that don't stick are the ones that are adopted purely out of panic without supporting systems. So let's apply that lens to what's about to happen with AI in the workforce. What will stick? The routine cognitive work is moving to AI permanently. The analyst who spent 4 hours a week building standard reports, that work is gone. The content team producing templated marketing copy, that workflow is changing. The HR screening process that took 80% CV filtering, that's already automated at most serious organizations. Now, these are not hypotheticals that I'm talking about. These are processes that have already been automated in most organizations and are about to be automated in the rest, because the economic pressure of this crisis just removed the last reason to wait. So what will not stick? The over-reliance on AI for high-stake judgment calls. And I keep speaking about this. So COVID taught us that remote work needs human connection to function at its best. Leaders who tried to manage culture purely through Slack found out the hard way. The same lesson will apply to AI. Organizations that automate too aggressively, too fast, without human oversight in the right places will make huge and expensive mistakes. In the last episode, I talked about United Healthcare and the mistakes that they did when they implemented AI. Now, here's the opportunity that most people are missing because they focus on fear. Every time COVID created a new way of working, it also created new roles. The person who understood remote team culture became indispensable. The person who could run distributed operations became critical. The person who could onboard and develop talent virtually became a leadership priority. You see, the same dynamic is coming with AI. And the professionals who understand what those roles are and start positioning themselves for them will be the ones who come out of this crisis in a fundamentally stronger position. Now, here's a brief personal note. Let me take a moment here because this is personal. You know the story. I have personally handed termination letters to 2,700 people, fathers, mothers, people who had built their entire professional identity around a role that one day simply stopped existing. And across every one of those 2,700 conversations, the same pattern revealed itself. The people who were most devastated were not the least talented. They were the ones who had stopped learning. They had become experts in their version of a world that no longer existed. They were knowers in a world that had shifted to reward learners. COVID was a version of that shift. This war is another version of that shift. The world is moving again, and whether it moves with you or past you depends entirely on what you do in the next 90 days. Part 5, the new roles being created right now. Now I want to spend some time because when COVID happened, the people who did best were not the ones who clung to the old ways. They were the ones who looked at the disruption and asked, what does this create that didn't exist before? So let me tell you what I see being created right now. These are new positions popping up and are needed up ahead. So let me talk about some of these roles which are popping up or will pop up in future. Role number 1, the AI integration strategist. Now, this is the person who sits between the technical AI capability and the business operational reality. They don't build AI. They don't even know coding. They're not a data scientist. They are the professional who can map a specific business workflow, identify exactly where AI can create return on investment, ROI, build a deployment plan, and manage the human transition. Every organization going through accelerated AI adoption will need such a person. You see, most organizations don't even have one yet. They haven't even thought of one yet. Role number 2, the crisis-proofed senior leader. Now, when algorithms fail in unprecedented conditions, and they will because they weren't trained for a war-driven supply chain collapse, organizations need human judgment at the wheel. The leaders who can operate effectively with incomplete information, who can make sound strategic calls under genuine ambiguity, they are not only needed, but will be the most valuable addition in the team. They will be irreplaceable. Even if you have 20 years of experience, that is not a liability in this environment. It is the thing that AI cannot replicate. Role number 3, the human-centered change manager. As companies automate aggressively, the remaining workforce will be anxious, uncertain, and watching carefully for what comes next. The leaders who can hold organizational culture together, especially during this transition, who can be honest about what's happening, while also keeping people focused and motivated, are doing work that no AI can do. Emotional intelligence under pressure is a strategic organizational asset right now. Role number 4, the AI auditor. In the rush to automate, and I want to be direct, it is going to be a rush. Organizations will make expensive mistakes. They will automate the wrong processes. They will over-rely on AI outputs that have a lot of embedded errors. They will face compliance failures they didn't see coming. The professional who can systematically audit AI outputs for operational errors, legal liability, and strategic blind spots is a role that barely existed 2 years ago and will be a senior position in large organizations within the next 24 months. So now the question arises, which of these descriptions is closest to where your experience and skills are today? And what's the gap between where you are and where that role needs you to be? Because here's what COVID taught us about timing. The people who recognized the new roles early and started positioning themselves before the full shift happened are those people who became the go-to experts by the time everyone else was scrambling. The curve wasn't crowded yet, not at that time. And that window exists right now with AI. So here is your action plan. Let me walk you through the 4-pillar rapid response blueprint. I have discussed this previously on another podcast episode, but it's worth going through it again, especially in the context of what's happening right now. Frameworks are useless unless you know how to apply them to your actual situation today. So let's start with pillar 1 of the blueprint, the cognitive audit. This week, I want you to take a sheet of paper and draw 3 columns. Column 1, what your job description says you're responsible for. Now, what you need to look are what are the outcomes, the deliverables, the strategic objective. That all goes into column 1. Column 2 is what you do on a day-to-day basis. The reports you run, the emails you write, the meetings you have, the approvals that you approve. All of this will come into column 2. Now, column 3. This is everything in column 2. Which task could an AI do right now from the list as in today? Can it replicate your work at acceptable quality? All those things in column 2. Now, I've said this before. Most professionals who do this exercise find that 40 to 60% of their daily activity that they do in column 2 will actually appear now in column 3. That is your vulnerability window. Those are the things that AI can take over. So column 3 is what your organization is going to look at. And the margin compression created by this conflict just made your organization significantly more likely to notice that number that is in column 3. The strategic move is to shift your time towards column 1. Stop doing the things that AI can do. Start spending your hours on the things that only you can do. Make yourself visible for those outcomes, all those things that are in column 1. Now, pillar 2 of the blueprint. It's called pro-grade immersion. Stop evaluating AI from the free tier. Use that $20 a month that you use on coffee and pay for ChatGPT or Claude Frontier model access. 1 hour a day of deliberate practice, not casual use, not asking it to summarize emails. Deliberate practice in your actual workflow. Understand what it can and cannot do in your specific domain. When your manager asks whether your team can automate a process, you need to be the person in the room who actually lifts their hand and says, I. Pillar 3 of the blueprint, workflow synthesis. Take one workflow in your job that currently eats 2 to 3 hours of your week. Redesign it with AI integration from start. Once you've done that, document it, articulate it. In an environment where companies are cutting costs and looking for efficiency models, the professional who can demonstrate I redesigned this workflow and delivered the same output in half the time is not a redundancy candidate. That person becomes the internal model. Pillar 4 of the blueprint, relationship building. Now, in a crisis, organizations move resources towards people they trust, not just the most productive people, the most known and trusted people. So be genuinely useful to people before you need anything from them. Build authentic professional relationships, not only within your team, but across your organization and your industry before the crisis hits your specific corner. So let's now go to the bigger picture. I want to close with this. I think it's important to name it clearly. COVID didn't just change where we work. It permanently changed what we expected from work. The relationship between employees and employers shifted. Talent had more leverage. Remote first hirings changed who was competing for what. The 5-day commuter week became a negotiating point rather than a given. Those shifts happened because a crisis removed the inertia that had been holding back change that was already overdue. What I believe we're watching right now is the same dynamic. The inertia that is holding back AI adoption in the workplace is economic friction and organizational caution. This war, the energy shock, the margin pressure, the wartime cost-cutting mandate removes that inertia, and fast. And just as we look back at 2020 and said, that was when everything changed, I believe we will look back at early 2026 and say the same thing about AI in the workplace. The question is not whether the change is coming. The question is whether you are on the right side of it when it arrives. I've been saying this for months, that we are in a comparable moment to February 2020, when the disruption was already underway, but most people hadn't felt it yet. The window to prepare was already measured in months, not years. This conflict in the Middle East has compressed that window even further. So don't be the professional who looks back at April 2026 and wish they moved sooner. Call to action. Here are 3 actions before the next episode drops. Action number 1, do the 3-column exercise this week. This is the exercise I mentioned above. Not when you get a chance, do it this week. Sit with it honestly. Find your 40 to 60% that AI can do. That's your starting point. Action number 2. If you're not on a paid AI tool, spend that $20. 1 hour a day for 30 days. That's all I'm asking. Not to stay current, but to actually understand what this thing can do inside your workflow. Don't use it like Google. Learn how to write prompts and how to push it. That knowledge is now a professional survival skill. Action point number 3. Identify one skill gap between where you are today and the roles I described in part 5. Pick one. Find one resource, a course, a book, a mentor, and commit to it for a month. That's it. 3 actions, all that can be done within this week. If you found this episode to be of some help, then please share it. There is someone in your network right now, a colleague, a manager, someone you care about, maybe your mentor, who needs to hear this before they get caught flat-footed. Send it to them. That's how this conversation will grow. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're building something here that I genuinely believe is different from what else is out there. No fluff, no guarantees. Just the truth and a roadmap. As mentioned in the last episode, do reach out to me or my team on brycebarrows.com and set up a one-on-one session. It's totally free of cost. It will give you direction. It will show you what you will need to do specifically in your area. If you can get that help, why not? Once again, it's free of cost, as I said. If you don't want to go via the website, you can reach out to me on one of the social media platforms. I'm practically on all of them. You can DM me there. So I'll see you in the next week's episode. I'm currently traveling, but my fingers are crossed that it will be launched on Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. I'm Bryce Barrows, your future readiness architect. Thanks for listening. And remember, the the future belongs to those who are ready. Go be unstoppable. Thank you.